Hi guys, today we have a very special podcast. It's my first podcast and also it's with my ex-wife.
Cheryl.
So welcome. This is going to be an interesting topic. It's how to get along with your ex.
I thought you were going to say first podcast with your first wife.
Learn from your mistakes.
That's not a good start to talk about how people are getting along.
I think we all need to learn from our mistakes. What do you think?
True.
We'll keep it pretty cash, but what I want to ask you though is tell us about the breakup. When did it happen? How did it happen
Oh God.
from your perspective? Going straight into it. What caused it? What were the issues?
Oh gosh, about 5 years now? Been
Mhm.
about 5 years?
Probably a bit more, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess, when you've had this much time to reflect over it,
Mm.
I would probably say what it was. We did marry very young.
Mhm.
I think, gosh, you were like 21 or something
When we met,
when
yeah.
we met,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then proposed within like a year or something. So
Mhm.
I think that played a big part. We were extremely young.
Yeah.
But I think now when I look back, it was probably the expectations. And I think it would have been expectations that we had.
Mhm.
I know I definitely had a marriage and what it should look like. We
Mhm.
come from a very traditional background.
Mhm.
And and there's a lot of beauty in that with the expectations, but there's very clearly defined ways of what marriage looks like.
Mhm.
And I think being the eldest kids and always striving for perfection to a certain extent, we felt we had to achieve that. So I think when we put that pressure on ourselves,
Mhm.
it's because we don't know ourselves that well. And I think my biggest, finding after
Mhm.
was self-awareness and just figuring myself out,
Mhm.
not defined to those terms. So figuring out, what are my goals? What is my purpose? Like, what do I
Yeah.
actually enjoy? What do I like?
Yeah.
You don't, I don't know if you felt that way, but I just probably didn't discover a lot of those things until recently. Do you
So,
relate with that at all?
um,
I don't know if marriage is really for me. The more and more I get to know myself,
Yeah.
the more and more I'm realizing that maybe I am meant to be alone. Yeah, being in the relationship, I think
Entrapment.
entrapment.
No,
Yeah, that would
not
be a good.
entrapment.
That's it.
But I
Got to be
know,
careful.
I
I got to
know
be careful with
what,
my words.
yeah.
Um, no, I think it was more. Yeah, the sense of freedom is lost
Yeah.
in the relationship. The expectations
Mhm.
kick in on both sides, as you said. And then you have expectations of yourself of, what a good husband should be or a good partner
Yeah,
should be.
yeah,
I think that comes into play. And then coming out of the marriage, I think there was a sense of liberation
yes,
to a certain extent, right? I mean, how liberated we feel is really up in our mind.
yeah.
I think it also comes down to the experiences that you have that sort of frame your judgment on how life should be.
Oh, 100%.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, based on the experiences that I had, I think yeah, I just felt, yeah, this isn't really what it's cut out to be. But
And what
I
do you
mean,
think shapes that?
What, like I said, it
well, the
was,
expectations that I had of a marriage were very different to how the marriage actually ended up being. So I think that's where there's a disconnect, right?
mm,
There's a
mm,
disconnect. Post divorce
yeah,
and being able to get along. I mean, let's face it. For the first couple of years, we didn't really get along that well because I mean, the animosity was there because of
mm,
whatever reasons on both sides. But that aside, because that's not what today's topic is. It's not about the things that we went through, but how we got through it. How did you realize that you need to be amicable with your ex?
I think for me personally, I think I always wanted that
Mhm.
because the kids were always my focus. And I think within the marriage, I realized I wasn't able to function to my full potential. So I needed to step away to be able to take care of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So in the back of my mind, I guess I was like, well, I'm doing a really bad job in this because I can't manage, family, I can't manage work, I can't manage like everything that's there.
Mm-hmm.
So if I step away, I can at least take care of myself
Yeah.
to be able to be like strong enough to be there for the kids. So, but I always knew that I would have to have you there to be able to fulfill that role because you can't do it on your own. Does that make sense? So I think I always knew it had to be amicable,
Right.
but
Mm.
yeah, it's like how you make it a bit amicable
Mm.
is the interesting part.
Okay, so how did you go about making it amicable?
Your ability to provide, your ability to create, that family structure, how families get along, the ability to, create a certain amount of stability.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is something that was needed. And then on my part, it was just the caring, nurturing, making sure the kids were emotionally seen to.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you realize these are the goals that you want to achieve,
Mm-hmm.
you just do whatever needs to be taken to create that, but also creating that safe environment for the children.
Did you find it hard to be amicable?
Definitely.
And
Definitely
what do you
challenging.
think? What do you think were the roadblocks?
The roadblocks would have been me not being able to just accept you for who you are. I think there was a period where I still had this expectation of what I wanted my, the kid's father to have and what I wanted a man to be, And I think as soon as you let go of those expectations,
Mm-hmm.
and you just say, well, this is a person and you need to accept them for who they are, no matter what that looks like. And I think when you take away that judgment,
Mm-hmm.
then I was able to say, beautiful, okay, this is him. This is what I'm dealing with.
Yep.
How do I work around that instead of making that,
Mm-hmm.
molding that to what I want?
Yeah.
So yeah, coming back to the first couple of years of post-divorce, I mean, we really weren't getting along that well. I mean, the animosity was pretty high on both sides. But what role did forgiveness play in being able to overcome that? And
I think on the part, like on my part for you, it wasn't about forgiveness as much as it was about acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
As I touched on earlier, it's more about learning to accept a person for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you talk about forgiveness, it would have been more forgiveness of myself, for having these expectations. And it wasn't you not fulfilling them, I didn't fulfill them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at us and we're very goal driven people, both of us, right? So whether it comes to work or whether it comes to how we, raise the kids or whether we are very goal driven. So even within the marriage, there were certain goals and expectations I had, and it was almost letting that go. So
how do you handle disagreements now as they come up?
to speak more through my emotions. What I've learned more recently is if I speak, which I have tried with you, and I notice you do get a better response, is if I say, oh, I'm feeling really, hurt by this, or I'm feeling really uncomfortable, I'm feeling really, you're smiling because have you noticed it?
Go on.
Okay. But when I speak into that,
Right.
I realize the response is better and we're not clashing as much.
Mm.
So it's not like I'm giving you my logical response and you giving me that back.
Mm.
It's almost like, okay, it's a better understanding.
Mm.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who finds it hard to let go of those negative emotions towards their ex?
I have said, I go, you need to go and do that work on yourself.
Mm.
And it's a hard thing for somebody to hear, especially when it's like, oh my God. they did this and they did that, and you feel very attacked and victimized. But yeah, that's the biggest thing I'd say. Because at the end of the day, if you're feeling so affected
Yeah.
by something, it actually has nothing to do with the other person. It has something to do with you. And I think in the situation we were in, it got to a point where it's not like I didn't try, but I didn't have the tools at that time. I didn't have the self-awareness at that time to be able to manage the situation. So instead of staying in it and hating you, I was like, man, I'd rather just get out of this, focus on myself, and not deal with that.
From my perspective, I think one of the biggest things was to let go of some form of pride or a perception that I had of myself, and just break that completely, and sort of, whether you call it the ego or if it's just a part of the mind where you think that this is me, and when you get rid of that and you realize that that really isn't you, it's something that you're putting on, it's a little bit liberating. And then the other part of the liberating factor is also expectations. You get rid of expectations, you feel more liberated, because then by operating in a way with you and vice versa, we don't have expectations. Things just flow.
Yeah.
So it's like when things don't happen your way, that's when you get frustrated, and then the tension can build up. But then if there isn't an expectation, then you just go, things just have to get done.
Yeah.
And for us, the priority number one is the kids. And I think I don't want to be a cause of any trauma for my children growing up. I think that was very important for me. And I think whatever I can do to grow and make myself more aware of how to be behaving in situations.
I think, like for me, what I find important is I want to give them the tools to understand that stuff is going to happen. You need to be able to be strong enough and like resilient enough and have that courage and that confidence in yourself to know that you're going to make it through. It's not always going to be easy, but you're going to make it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
So I think
life's going to
that's what I
throw,
want to give them.
yeah, life's going to throw us challenges, and that's a good thing. You grow from it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's essentially what, when I talk about with family and friends as well. The thing is, you're always going to face challenges. To what you're saying, the other thing is to consciously not be a victim in a situation, right? To not play the victim. And I think during the whole divorce, I think we both went through situations where we played victims, and that didn't get us anywhere in a positive outcome, right? So you just dwell on it, and then becomes like a downward kind of spiral.
Yeah.
So realizing that we're responsible for a lot of we're actually responsible for all of our emotions, right? We're responsible for it. I mean, external stimulus is always going to be there. That's going to impact us, but it's like how do we deal with that external stimulus? We're not superhumans, but we can be conscious of that emotion as it comes up and then change it. So if we are going to get frustrated and angry, which is a part of life, then be aware that, listen, that's not really helping me in getting a good outcome. I think also in all this, self-love is important as well. To be in a situation where you need to be able to look after yourself before you look after others. And if you look after yourself, you're going to be able to operate with love and compassion and empathy and for the people around you. And obviously the first ones that come to mind are the children. So if we put them, initially I used to think that you put them first, but then you got to put yourself first to make sure that you're in a good state to then be able to share that with putting yourself in the other person's shoes at times, just to go, you know what, how would I deal with things if I was spoken to this way or treated this way? I think that's important in general anyway, but in a relationship it's very important because you're seeing that person, on a regular basis. I mean, the fact that we've got kids, we're seeing each other all the time.
Yeah.
And you're always going to be part of my life, and I'm going to be always part of yours until until one of us carks it. But well, you know what? Thanks for doing this first podcast with me. Hope you had some fun.
Best podcast with the first wave.
Yeah, for the first. Yeah, probably only.
No,
But,
that's good.
but yeah, no, thanks for that. That was
No,
good.
that's all right. It
Yeah.
was fun.
Awesome.
Stuff like this
But
is
yeah,
good.
hopefully you guys like the content for today. If you do, please do subscribe to the channel and just click on that like button. Thank you.